My name's Mark Shears, and I've got a Morgan Plus 4 flat rad that I've had several years and rebuilt from the ground up. I found it one Christmas when I was surfing the internet and went onto an American website and saw an advert for a 1952 Morgan Plus 4 60% restored. I have to say I'm still trying to find the bit that has been 60% restored, but I'd always wanted a flat rad, and so I answered the advert only to find in fact that the car or the vendor wasn't in America, he was actually in Thailand. I replied to the advert and said I would be interested to have some more information, and didn't hear anything for several weeks. And then right out of the blue got some photographs which showed the car in well, a very unrestored state. It was literally just a rolling chassis, no bodywork, no trim. The engine was in, the head was off, but it was a rolling chassis effectively. But I couldn't tell where the car was, and I tried to look and see if it was in America, because at that time I didn't know that the vendor was in Thailand. But in fact it turned out to be a lot closer to home. It was actually in Essex all the time. When I saw the photographs, I looked at the car, but more interestingly were the boxes of bits littered around it, because I was looking to make sure that it got its major original components, including the Moss gearbox, etc. But I also noticed hanging up on the garage wall in the background a number plate, and I recognised the fact that it was a Worcester registration. KUY is a Worcester registration, and the rest of it was 475, and I just seem to remember in the back of my mind that the KUY registrations and that one were registrations that the Morgan factory used on their works or test cars. And so it was. I looked it up and found out that in fact it was the lead car of 3 cars built in 1952 to compete in the 1952 competition year, together with a 4th car which was to be reserved for the Morgan factory, and that car in fact went on to be the Le Mans car. But the other 3 had a great competition career throughout the 1950s, and I was absolutely amazed to find that here it was, languishing in a garage in Essex. KUY 475 was to be for the Rees cousins. They owned Blake's of Liverpool and were very, very keen and active rally drivers and race drivers as well. But the car also went on to do the Rallye Des Alpes in 1952, and although it was said that the Rees cousins were otherwise engaged, it was actually driven by Peter Bolton, who went on to become a works driver for TVR and AC, and in fact drove the AC Coupe on the motorway, in fact on the M1, and it was him who's accredited with introducing the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, because they were testing the AC, I think, at very high speeds, let's put it that way, and fell foul of the law, and that's the reason why I understand that we've now got the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, all down to Peter Bolton, who drove my car on the Rallye Des Alpes. The nice thing about the car is that it's competed in all sorts of events, from races and rallies to sprints and hill climbs, even autocrosses, but it's also a great road car as well. And I've taken it to France on a couple of occasions where it's just been absolutely marvellous, but we're very lucky around here as well that we've got some great roads, particularly around the Cotswolds, and here where I live in South Warwickshire we've got one of the oldest motorsporting venues of anywhere, which is Sunrising Hill just up the road. It's just great roads, particularly for the Morgan, which of course it was built for. Like all Morgans, it's still got its original sliding pillar front suspension, but of course being an early 50s car, it is drum brakes all round, and it goes very well but doesn't stop quite as well. And one of the things that we spent a great deal of time post rebuild is actually getting the brakes to work properly. Of course, it's got its original Moss gearbox, and interestingly, one of the original owners of the car, who owned it during the 1960s, and raced it during the 1960s. He got in touch with me and sent me some wonderful period photographs of him competing with it. And he asked me if it still had its original gearbox, and I said, rather surprisingly for a competition car, that it had. And he said to me, well, that gearbox has actually got D-type internals, because his father, who owned Burgess silencers, used to supply Jaguar with their silencers, and he went along one day to find that they were cutting up and disposing of all of the old D-type Jaguars in the competition department and chucking away the Moss gearboxes. And so he said, oh, I've got the gearbox like that in my car. So they inquired as to what it was, and he said, of course, a Moss gearbox for his Morgan. And they said, well, help yourself, you can have one, they're only going to scrap. So he said, I took the internals out and rebuilt it into the original casing, and he said, if that's what you've got, that's what it is. So it's probably one of the only Morgans with its original Moss gearbox, albeit with D-type Jaguar ratios in it. But of course they've always handled, all Morgans handle extremely well with that original sliding pillar front suspension. Ideal on smooth surfaces, less ideal on rougher surfaces, and certainly back in the day the roads even in this country, let alone on the Rallye Des Alpes, wouldn't have been anywhere near as good as they are today, but they do handle and hold the road extremely well. With its wonderful period competition history and much of it international competition history, it means that it's eligible for just about everything. I race it with FISCAR, 50 Sports Car Racing now, but it's also eligible, of course, for such prestigious events as Le Mans Classic and also the modern day Rallye Des Alpes, which would be a great event to take it back to. So hopefully going forward there's lots of exciting events that she's eligible for and that we can compete with. So here's to the future.